Welcome back to Cosmic Brilliance, folks, for part 6, titled Earth Life as Ascension Trials, Creator Training, and Planetary Souls. Most of you are familiar with my lovely guest, Super Soldier Apollymi Mandylion. And as a quick reminder for you newbies, Apollymi is a dragon elf hybrid. And she came here at the very beginning to ancient Atlantis civilization for karmic reasons. She's originally from Source Creator's first universe called Hanova. And she was called upon also to work for the Starseed Council because she is very fair and able to see multiple sides of a situation, clearly and evenly. Her abilities are considerable, highly advanced, and dangerous, which is one reason that Section 13 puts her in a smart suit to keep those abilities in check. So I wish to honor the inquiries of our subscribers. So before we start the main themes of the show, I will have Apollymi answer 5 of the most popular questions you have sent in to me. Welcome, Apollymi, and thank you for being here. So generous with all you go through to offer your time and wisdom to help us here on Earth evolve our consciousness faster. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So let's start. Now, people are really confused about your suit. So people have seen you in your beautiful, bright, smart suit you're wearing that you have on the show. And then they also say, oh, in her earlier channel, she's wearing a t-shirt. So they are unclear about the intricacies, designs of your smart suits, like what you wear and what happens when you go outside to lie in the sun or buy groceries. So let's get that out of the way because I've had numerous requests about that. Okay?
Okay. So first of all, what you guys are seeing is my hosting outfit for our show, Galaxy of Unity Projects. That is not the suit that I'm talking about. Okay, just to make that perfectly clear, I can wear any clothes that I want to. The suit that I'm talking about is a holographic dimensional suit. So depending on what body I'm in, because we did do an episode where I went over body hopping, or basically your soul gets transferred into another body, physical vessel. The suit basically keeps me looking the same-ish. All right, so that I can walk around. I'm not looking like a full-blown ET. People aren't trying to, pitchforks and torches and everything else like that. So the suit is basically a wetsuit that is full body from head to toe and tail, if I have my tail. It is very thin. I also have augments that if I have wings, my tail, or my ears, or whatever extremities for the bodies that they put me in, that it raises the vibrations of those basically body parts so that the human eye cannot see them. And the same with the smart suit. The smart suit is a dimensional technology that's very advanced, which I hope that we don't have to see that in the worst light with Project Bluebeam coming up, but it's the same technology. So it basically projects a image of how do I put this?
Holographic?
It basically projects an image that is constant for the most part. I can break my suit occasionally, and like my hair will start to change color. It allows for my eyes to start slivering. My skin tone can change immediately to the human eye. I have had people feel my wings and my tail and slightly be able to see them, kind of like this weird like shimmer effect, basically, for the invisible technology, I guess people would say it. You can make shields and everything with certain material, and it has that like outline effect. So it's not like I'm like, oh, there's a suit that I'm in, it's no, I've spent years not researching, but like observing. I've spent years observing the technology that they've been putting on me. And I've had this ever since I was a kid, mostly. But, you know, they're the ones who put me down here. So I've had it even beforehand. But they've definitely upgraded my suit when I was about 5.5 years old. I remember them putting the wetsuit on me. I remember putting the contact lenses that are like binoculars in my eyes and the augments in my ear. The suit is also attuned to the augments in my brain, both on my pituitary and thymus gland, and the one a couple inches from my ear. So they
One's
can
for communication, right? The ear.
yeah, communication, that project. It just alters your, it tries to alter your perception of reality, but it does send off frequencies because it, so I can usually tell when it's my augment and, you know, not something else.
When she describes this very kind of black, thin wetsuit, the other super soldiers I've talked to, it's not really a wetsuit, but it looks, it's kind of like super thin material, usually is full of nanites and intelligence so that it can handle different things. Is that true with yours?
The nanite part, not entirely so much. The suit itself is, I wouldn't consider it nanites, but it is very advanced for absorbing energy. It also dampens my abilities. So I could wake up one day and my abilities are just pretty much gone. But that also has to do with some of the augments in my brain too, because the government doesn't like us having our abilities, especially out in public. But when the Schumann resonance gets really high, I've noticed that it's, my suit actually starts to malfunction a lot easier.
Which
So
folks we're not going to get into, but it is off the wall high and pole shifting. We're going to have to save that for another show.
so when I get on base, this suit I get to take off and I get to be in my real form. The battle suits, it can have the changing technology, but for the most part, no. You're talking about the ones that help seal up wounds and
Mhm.
help enhance abilities through synapses and stuff. This isn't the same suit.
Okay, so what you have on now is a piece of clothing you liked and picked?
No.
Okay,
No.
so explain. Okay, because you say this is just what I wear. So
No, oh, this is just a suit that I got offline. It is supposed to be for our web series that we're going to be um creating of my personal disclosure in basically video format. So the holographic suit, this is not my holographic suit, guys. Okay,
okay, so that clears that.
this is just a piece of clothing. The suit that I'm talking about, so like when I go on base and they are going to put me back in civilian life, they put me in a, it's thin like this, okay, very thin, and it's very forming. That suit is my holographic suit. So if the matrix drops, the suit becomes useless. If I go past the moon, the suit becomes useless because it's only programmed for Earth.
Right. And folks, the matrix covers Earth and at least half of Moon. So that's why it doesn't work when she goes past Moon.
Right. So I literally have to go past the orbit of the moon in order to, for my matrix stuff to drop. That suit is the holographic suit. That makes it to where what you guys are seeing now. So depending on what body I'm in, I could be in several different, you know, forms depending on the day. But it will show you this every single time. Now, I've had evidence where my rib cage is smaller than it's normal for measurements. I started measuring my body, like my legs, my calves, my back, taking my weight every night, you know, the measurements of my facial structure, everything. And for people who are around me constantly for at least a year, they'll actually start seeing the changes. It sometimes my physical form does not match up to where I just went to bed the next night. So because the suit is only so good, you know.
And plus there's a whole nother part of that where you're put into different bodies, but we won't go there for this show. Okay.
Right.
So
it dampens my abilities. It also dampens how much prana, mana, energy that I can consume for around me. So basically it allows me to starve.
it keeps her weak because they're scared of her, folks.
Right.
Okay.
And it basically creates a holographic image of basically what you're seeing. So if the suit was to, if the veil was to, not the veil, sorry, if the matrix was to fall for specifically this suit for what humans see, then they would be seeing the body that it was currently residing in, which is non-human. So, you know,
okay, because that was one of my questions. My fourth question is, if the matrix suddenly collapsed, what would people be seeing?
Well, they would probably be seeing like the face helm plate with the rest of the helmet, and then the thin suit with, you know, it looks like a diver suit.
But they would okay with you, but also in the world they would be seeing, and you know, ships overhead.
Oh,
and different people actually being ETs and all that stuff, right?
The people that you think that you know, that are you meet on a daily basis, aren't all as they appear. There's a lot of ETs down here who also use the same technology of my suit. If ETs come down here and they just want to hang out for the holidays, or you know, they're down here to just keep an eye on things for other factions, they use the same graphic technology, holographic technology.
That makes sense. Okay, so I know that these are like primitive questions for you, but I'm just asking. So if I was going to, which I'm not allowed to do, go knock on your door and walk in, okay?
I wouldn't recommend that.
No, I'm not going to. But what? Yeah, exactly. People, don't try that. Do not practice that at home. I would see you in your dragon elf form because you're not in a holographic display suit, correct?
No, my suit only comes off either when I'm on base getting ready for missions, or when I'm out in outer space doing emissary work or
Or
on
when you're
missions.
sleeping. It has to.
Nope, I still wear it when I'm sleeping.
Oh my God.
I wear it when I'm sleeping. I wear it when I'm showering, everything.
So strict rules for no one to discover who you are 24/7. You have to wear that suit unless you're free for your natural body on base or off world.
Pretty much.
Wow.
I get clean when I'm on base. So
with that,
they sanitize,
get
they
your
sanitize
wings washed with the sound, or what do they use to do that? Sound?
We just use normal water on base. We don't get anything super special.
Oh.
When I go do my emissary work, depending on, usually the Chakrel will come pick me up, or other factions, and then I get to use their bathing facilities. There's a lot of them that don't use a whole lot of water, so it's either sonic or, and I don't really like the sonic showers, but the mist showers are really nice. The frequencies that they use in the mist showers aren't so bad, but the sonic showers are just kind of annoying.
Okay, well, especially for you because you'd be so sensitive to that. Okay, so all the time when you go out get groceries or whatever, you're always in your suit all the
Pretty
time
much.
on Earth, or you get quote punished.
I mean, my suit's broken a couple times in public, so I have had people see my eye color change to rare eye colors. My eyes have turned crimson red before, 3 times. I've had that event happen. My skin gets really like pearlescent pale white sometimes. My hair color will be dark and then it'll start turning red. You know, just the suit breaks and my abilities start to come through during certain events.
Now, because of your wings, and you used to have larger wings, and there's a long story of that, why they're smaller now, but because of your wings and your long prehensile tail, you've had experiences too, haven't you, where you've been out or and someone trips on it or
Mhm.
feels the breeze. Why don't you tell people an example of that? Okay. So they're not seeing it because they're just seeing the holographic display of you, to simplify it. But if they walk around you or hug you or do something like that, then they can feel things, right?
I've noticed that the higher the energy is for the Schumann resonance, the more my suit has issues. And most people would just be like, "Oh, you're just experiencing your astral limbs." There's a huge difference. Okay. Very huge. Um, Going out grocery shopping. Like when I'm fully attuned to my body, because soul transfer, you have to kind of reconnect everything. And they actually give me a proper clone of my actual body that they constantly have locked away. I have my wings, I have my tail, I have the ears on my head. So I have two sets of ears. I have these ears and these ears. These ones do not hear the same as these. They have a completely different sensatory to them for how I perceive things. And I can't wear hats. I can wear hoods. I don't like wearing headbands. They actually, ever since I was a kid, like it felt like circulation was being cut off right here. Same with my tail. Tight pants, can't stand it. Anything super heavy or dense. I've shut my tail in the door a couple times.
Oh,
My tail does not like that because
can
like
you tie
sometimes,
your tail close to you or how,
yeah.
to be extra safe or anything?
Yeah, I can wrap it around me, but it's really weird because it's like having one of those weird floaty things, like when you're in the water around. That's what it feels like. And I'm just like, oh, so bizarre. But
A
it's better than
flotation belt.
having. I have been in a grocery store and someone has tripped physically over my tail and they tripped in the middle of the aisle. There was nothing else around them. And two people saw this and they were just sitting there staring at me like, what the hell? I have literally walked by places, turned around, and my tail has knocked stuff off of the shelves
Uh-oh.
and nothing else was around me.
So it's prehensile, so you can wrap it around you, but at a certain point, if it's wrapped too tight, right? Like all parts of us usually want to be free.
Yeah, my legs will fall asleep.
Does it fall asleep?
Yeah, like my area will like start
Oh my
falling
God.
asleep.
And it connects all the way up to your buttocks and your spine, your tail
Mhm.
does?
Yeah,
Oh
it
my
is
God.
literally if you took your human's tailbone and extended it out to where it's supposed to be, uh, for dragons and reptilian kind, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's great details, and now we have a deeper understanding of how this works in your case. And you are able to crash them when you can match the frequencies to break yourself free of them when you get upset enough that you're in them, or if your powers really go on strong.
Yeah,
And
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 they've
that's why they
had
like to restrict you, right?
yeah, and they've had about 4 years of me completely rebelling hardcore in order to master these suits. They've gotten a lot better, but
Okay. All right. Well, there's your questions, gang, for right now. So let's get into. We talked about what people would see if the matrix collapsed, which covers, uh, the illusionary whatever we're seeing around the Earth and the Moon. So my first question is, who put up the matrix for the Ascension game?
again, like we spoke about before, there's several technologies of the Matrix put up by various ET factions that each item of the Matrix has its own agenda. So when I say that the Matrix will fall, that only might mean one part of the Matrix. This planet has so much technology around it that doesn't usually exist on seed planets. The original Matrix for the fifth era of man was put up by the council who governs the experiments down here, not the Starseed Council. We make sure that the other council actually obeys by source creators' laws. But the council who actually created the experiment for down here, they get to decide what matrix gets put up. And the original one was to make sure everyone forgets where they came from after when you were reincarnate, to basically have everyone look the same and for abilities to be hampered quite a bit. They cannot stop the ascension. That is Source Creator's law. So there has to be a energy cap, if you want to put it that way. So if that matrix falls, you're going to have your powers back. Well, I can't say back. It will become easier to obtain them, because even then you still have to work at it. It's not something that's fully granted to you, and it depends on your genetics. You're not going to have the same abilities as other species. It's just not how it works. You can ascend to that, but it's a lot of work on changing your own DNA. You're going to see everybody for what they really are. Like me, my matrix suit drops, I ripped all my stuff off, and after I get dressed, because I don't wear anything underneath your suit.
I can't wait, personally.
So, your best friend might be non-human and you don't even know it.
They don't know it.
Sometimes they don't know it either,
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the people who are in the programs, okay? The DNA from ET species happens naturally. And sometimes after long strands of breeding, two people will get together and have a child who is higher in genetics. Once the veil falls, that child's going to be able to see themselves for what they really are, and along with everyone else, but the veil would fall a lot sooner if people learned how to get along with each other and other species, but that ain't happening so far.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, because I thought the Seed Council was the one that put up one of the matrices, but
they did put up one matrix. The Starseed Council basically put up the matrix. The Starseed Council put up the one of the matrices that actually dampens people's energy. The veil is the one that actually keeps this planet vibrating at a lower frequency, so it suffocates it.
Just lovely, right?
Right. Because the more energy that you have, the more frequencies that are producing, the more things can evolve quickly.
Right. Okay, we're going to get more into that. And thank you so much. That was so important. One of the most important things I wanted to have you delineate out today is in a previous show, you briefly talked about the 7 ascension tier levels of consciousness. And Earth has 7, I think you said, densities or tier levels that are part of the game to go from 1 to 7. Okay, now this has never been clarified for anyone before that I know about, what each tier is, give an example of each, and what our consciousness would be like at each tier level, because that's really important to do today. So how about, am I right so far about the 7 tiers? And
yeah,
for Earth?
Yeah.
For the Earth. And each planet has its own tiers or densities, or?
Yes. So each planet in the universe is basically measured and then categorized. And this has to do with the planet's frequencies itself, for its consciousness, if it has one. Not all planets do. And the consciousness of the beings that live there. So if the society is more utopian and has like the rules and everything, and they don't have a lot of strife, that's going to be a higher density planet.
Okay. Of course, Hanova is a great example of a higher density universe, but anyway.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start then. And so talking about the 7 tiers or densities of consciousness growth, let me have you start at the first tier density, okay, and describe that first.
Okay, so first, I have to clarify that there is more densities in this universe than just 7. However, 7 was the level cap that they were looking for evolution in order for mankind to have dysphoria. And that means that, everyone's working together, everyone has, a neutrality. You don't have to be love and light. You just have to be neutral in order to join the star community, basically, for the universe. So first level of first density would be like, it's all consciousness. Okay, we're measuring consciousness. It would be like bacteria. Okay, so most people start off a little above that. Second density would be like an amoeba. Third density would be obviously
wait, you're going a little fast. So second tier, you're talking about it would be more like just basic survival, primitive.
Yeah. So you go from the bacteria, which is basically like the very first forms of survival. You know, they don't even really know. They have a basic understanding of their surrounding, obviously, because they need to feed, they need to produce, and everything else. The consciousness above that would be like an amoeba, where it's a little better, you know, or even like a plant. Okay, so like the plant would be like, oh, I know my surroundings, I can communicate with plants around me, I know when the weather's going to change. You know, they have fully consciousness of things walking around them or interacting with them. The third density would be human consciousness that is set down on this planet. And most humans are between 3 to 3.5. Okay.
Right now.
Right now.
On the planet. That's still pretty low.
That's not everybody. This is your basic human consciousness.
That's like caveman stuff, right?
Right. So survival, reproduction, understanding and calculating, you know, your environment, how to manipulate things, how to interact with others, that sort of thing. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're empathic. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, that you have, it's weird because once you hit third density, like the evolution of man's consciousness kind of did a flip. It kind of forgot the female aspect of things like empathy, telepathy, that sort of stuff, because that's all golden spiral stuff. And it focused more on the male aspect, which would be the silver spiral for, you know, survival, like mass amounts of breeding without, you know, the emotional attachment, that sort of thing, you know, doing what you need to do to survive, to eat. So it's more on the silver spiral. And that imbalance is what causes the huge, you know, problem of rifting basically between consciousnesses. So once you start ascending through your consciousnesses, you start to kind of do the kundalini where both snakes start to intersect with each other. And that's exactly what you need. You need that balance. When I say neutral, you have a understanding of your emotions versus the logic that is happening. That doesn't mean you're emotionless if you're logic. A lot of ETs, you know, they still have emotion. They're just really refined. You know, the Octurians, for a good example, are perfect for the logic, and they're more logical for the most part than emotional, but that doesn't mean they're emotionless.
Yeah.
And then you have humans that are pretty much all emotion versus logic. So
yeah. I know there's one species that when we smile, they look at that as the aggression that we want to eat them.
Yeah.
So like, no, wrong communication. Okay, so third tier is, so what you're saying, it's kind of like more social and bonding.
Yeah, if you think of, like, I hate to say this and people are going to get offended anyway, cavemans, okay? They have a social structure. They have that community structure. They have, you know, but they're more on getting their needs met and surviving versus knowing that the universe can provide for them. And everyone's like, oh yeah, they say that, but there's a difference when you actually know how the flow of reality works.
And so you have said, I think, that this third density, right, which is where humans kind of came in for this game, the planet itself is still third density. It's not fourth, but her consciousness is higher. So the physics and consciousness are different of a planet, right?
Yes, sort of. There's a but.
Okay.
So the consciousness of this planet has evolved into fifth dimension. But this does not change the actual physics of the reality that is here. For people who ascend even to seventh tier, they're still existing in a 3 to 3.5 physics density. You don't, If you existed at 7th tier physical density, you would just poof out of existence for the humans because they can't see that high. They can't perceive that high. Usually. I mean, if you have abilities of seeing spirits and ghosts and the astral and stuff, you're looking between 5th to up. But
Okay.
you yourself are still existing in the 3.5 density.
Okay, because we still want to do this, all the densities. So what you're saying stresses or emphasizes the importance of how important it is to not only balance, quote, the male female aspects in stereotypes, but the body with higher consciousness. How
Yes.
integrated, how balanced we are is the whole ultimate game. Okay, now go into 4th tier. What is
Okay.
what is 4th tier or
So you have your 3, which is basically caveman. 3.5 would be what most people are today. You know, you're a lot more comfortable with your situation and stuff. You might be a lot more empathic because you're not just focusing on survival. You're not focusing on where your food's going to come from and all this other stuff. You don't need to go out and hunt specifically for your food. So
4th tier you're talking about?
no, 3.5. 3.5.
3.5. Okay.
3.5 is your average everyday person in here and now. So you go from caveman to nowadays.
Okay.
Right. And again, this is your average person with really kind of not really a whole lot of abilities. They might have a bit of empathy, like you can tell when someone feels sad, or you can feel when something happened in a room where there was a lot of strife and no one's there anymore. Basic abilities. 4th tier is when you really start to center yourself and when your abilities start to just kind of kick up more. You're going to be able to feel what people are feeling. It's not going to be overwhelming exactly, but you're going to start getting that ability. You're going to be able to know when people are lying to you. You're like, is that really the truth? Like you're more perceptive a little bit for 4th. You're just starting. You're like, okay, there's the physical and then there's beyond the physical.
Okay, hold that thought. So the 3rd and 3.5, is this where humanoids and animals participate? And is it more about seeing the interrelatedness, whereas the 4th density, like you're describing, is more empathic and feeling the interrelatedness of things?
Yes. But like plants are pretty much all of like what we would call the golden spiral or the female spiral. Their entire networking depends upon not only the physical but also the emotional as well, because it is scientific fact, if you go to a plant and be like, I'm going to cut you, and you have that intention, that plant synapses will react.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and this goes with sacred geometry too, because once you hit that 3rd stage, it is balance.
Okay.
So once you start hitting the 6th dimensional stage, there's a balance there. And in the 9th dimensional stage, there's a balance there. But it continues to go up and up for abilities and awareness.
Okay, great. So the 4th tier then is like feeling the interconnectedness and what actually happens with your abilities at that level.
It really depends on the person, right? 4th tier, you're just starting to get yourself out of the herd, as most people call it. You're starting to be more like, maybe this logically isn't exactly what people have been telling me. You diverge into your own like perspective because you're going from a whole bunch of people and you're kind of going off to the side here and being like, I need to be alone right now. Things are not exactly starting to add up. As for abilities, you're going to be more perceptive, possibly. You're going to possibly start being more, have empathy. You're going to be more empathic. So you can start to, most people, which I'm surprised of, they don't know what another person is feeling. They go on the bus, they can go to the mall, like if a person is very stoic faced, they don't know what they're feeling. A person at a higher tier with ability, that person could be stoic and walk up and be like, hey man, what's wrong? And they're going to be like, how do you know? Because they can feel it. It's another, your third eye, your ESP is kicking in. Your perception of, your third eye and your aura, your toroidal fields are emerging constantly. But now you're actually starting to be able to react to it and sense it a lot more.
Now, do you get more into, I don't know, what's called our shadow work? Like to become, is that the stage you become more interested in self-inquiry and personal work?
That's about like 4.5, because
Okay.
you're diverging yourself from the herd because you're like, oh, something's not right here. 4.5 is usually like to the point where, you know, you start inquiring more about yourself. And transitioning into the fifth, when you start hitting the fifth, you're going to find yourself like, you don't know yourself anymore. You realize that you've spent this entire time not knowing who or what you really are. And so a lot of these people will start, stop talking to friends, stop talking to family members. If they're married or in a relationship, they become very isolated and secluded because they're trying to just get to know themselves, to understand their reality better. They've been lied to their entire lives. And
Is
so they're
that
taking
is that where depression or suicidal tendencies can come in also?
it can, if you allow it to lead in that direction. It is a very hard time, which is why the academy was so important, because to be physical, because at this stage, it is so important to have guidance, to know, to have counselors and to get yourself out of a rut if you go into that, to be able to be like, it's going to be okay. You just need to take the time to get to know yourself. And this requires a lot of energy. All right. Like if people have jobs, they have kids, they have families, responsibilities. You don't want to deal with this when you're going through this stage. And it makes it incredibly hard. And most people stop at this stage and go right back to 3.5 or even third. They don't have the time. They don't have the know-how. They don't have, the path to take in order to go through it all the way. And I have had to reset myself several times to go through these ascension stages. And not once had I done it the same way. Not once. I've been reset for the ascension thing ever since I was a kid. It was part of my contract down here. So
Give an example of that.
what do you mean to ascend?
Well, I mean, no. Like, did you reset from 7 to 3.5 or?
It depends. Like sometimes I'll hit like 4 or 5 and I can't go any further for the stage of life I'm in right now. Maybe I was, a teenager with my parents, and everything was crappy, and the environment is so important. If you don't have a good environment, you ain't getting into your higher tiers, or if you do, congratulations, because that is difficult. Health issues, family issues, that sort of stuff. Your environment is incredibly important. And that's why most people will just, if they choose to, pack up and leave. They'll drop everything. You know, I wanted to go to the Tibetan monk temple, but they don't really take females. So I was all ready to shave my head and everything. I'm like,
Oh, they'll eventually get there.
I was going to drop everything.
So the fifth tier then, thank you for that, love. So is the fifth tier where you're going through this really big consciousness shift, self-evaluation, you prefer only certain people around you, you're not as negative, and like quote the concept of bad karma or bad luck is less. Like do all those things happen around the fifth?
So fifth tier, some people, not all, are going to start, they can feel very uncomfortable around like swearing, because like your powers are starting to kick up. Okay, your abilities are starting to awaken, and it might be subconscious. You might actually start veering away from people who are just negative all the time. They have bad stuff that happens into their life, and they might be good people, but you just find it really hard to be around them. The energies alone are very dense, they're very yucky. Yeah, people who don't have clean auras, like they don't take the time to meditate. My aura right now is absolutely freaking atrocious. I've been sick for 2 months and I've had a lot of stuff happen. So I apologize for my energy. But
It's beautiful.
a lot of people just you might find it very uncomfortable to be in public in general, except for like people who are like, who take the time to cleanse themselves energetically, you know and swearing might actually start physically hurting to be around. When I got to 7th tier, I couldn't be around anyone who swears. And I used to swear like a sailor, okay? I played Call of Duty too. I even made an Admiral of the Navy blush while I was on his team for the stuff that was coming out of my mouth. That's truth. I could not be around it. And that doesn't mean that everyone's going to be this way. But it literally felt like someone was taking an energetic knife and just raking it through my entire aura and into my body. And the reason why it hurts is because it's not entirely the word itself. Because once you understand harmonics and you understand frequency, English is the most unharmonic language on the planet. Okay? It's the intention. You could say, I love you, or I love you, or I love you, All three of those. One was like, I actually love you. The other one was like, hey, baby. And the other one was like, I'm going to kill you, So they all have different energy to them.
Yeah.
And it's that intention, that anger, that frustration. And when people go through the ascension, they're trying to figure out how to deal with all these different energy types that are clashing together.
So, 6th tier, would you be more likely to want to be in nature a lot and abilities come on? And then 7th tier, you become more non-attached, or what's the difference between those two, would you say?
So going between 5th and 6th, as I said before, like negative energy, you're not going to want to be around a whole lot. Either you learn how to deal with it, and I don't mean like, oh, deal with it. I mean like energetic wise, energy wise, you learn to shield yourself from it, or you just can't be around it. There is really no either or at that point. So the learning to deal with it and learning to shield yourself would be more the neutrality. You understand why people are acting the way that they are, and that they're on their own journey and they're just not there yet. So you learn to protect yourself. The pure love and light would be like not really learning how to deal with it, and you just don't want to be around it. I know that sounds really kind of weird, but
No, it makes sense. It makes sense.
during the 5th, like 5.5, is really when your abilities start to pick up. You might start even getting more abilities. I've noticed through the transition of my students at this point, they some of them will be able to start tasting things through their skin. Some of them will be able to like actually start seeing energy, the astral, the other dimensions. Your cell phone, your technology is going to start to really affect you. It's either going to feel like it's draining you or that it's hurting you physically. Like you just you'll be able to actually feel the energies more. The sun, when the solar flares hit, you might get affected a lot more. And some people might see ascension as like, a problem because all these things are starting to affect you now. You're being a lot more sensitive to things. And it's just the way that evolution works. You're going to be able to be more sensitive to stuff. But the more that you do it and the longer that you're in there, the more you learn to cope. So,
Okay.
7th tier is this what we call the beginning of the end, or at least I call it the beginning of the end. And the reason for that is because it is the end of one journey and the beginning of the next one. Again, when you start doing the caduceus, basically, when you're at the top, you have that circle, and you're going to diverge into a new sphere of existence and consciousness. So there's stuff beyond 7th tier. But you have to deal with all the stuff first down here. And seventh tier, like, you're definitely by seventh tier, you should be neutral. You should be like, I understand why there's evil. And it's not just saying that. You're like, oh, I understand there has to be a balance. You understand the balance. You understand that nothing changes without chaos, without the, if things are the same, it's like Canova. Okay, if things are the same over there all the time and you don't have any negative events, you're not changing anything. You're not understanding why it's so precious. You're not understanding that there has to be that chaos that happens in order to ebb and flow evolution itself in certain ways. And that neutrality is very important because even though there's a lot of ETs who are higher dimension, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do only good actions, because that's not the way that it works. And the love and light crowd is like, oh, all ETs are so nice and good and all benevolent ETs can't do no wrong. That's not true. That just means you exist at a higher consciousness, but that doesn't mean that you still can't do negative things. And you can also fall in ascension too if you don't keep up at it. I want to make that explicitly clear.
So it's always an inner practice, and it seems like it's a level of discernment without extreme judgment. The wisdom that comes from a tier 7th consciousness, you're able to discern and go, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, but you're not trapped in the whole judgment thing,
right. By 7th level, you will have a pretty much a neutral aspect of things. You'll understand why things are, but also the logic versus emotion. And I had to go through this stage too. When I first, started getting the records and recollection of the experiments down here, everything in full, because I was working with a lot of the ET councils at this point, trying to figure out for the Immortal 7 what the heck actually happened down here, that everything's so messed up. I started getting all this. I was still in that human phase of consciousness where I was very emotional. I didn't understand, like, you guys are just using us as experiments. This is freaking beep, 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 beep. Like, I was pissed. I was very upset because not only because I'm experiencing it, but is for me morally wrong to be treated like a lab rat. But I didn't see it from their perspective. And I didn't start to see it until I started going through the ascension. And now I'm like, okay, well, this is very unfortunate that they have to experience this, but it is also not only just helping, other people learn about not to do this again, seriously,
Right.
but the implications that come with it. It's like signing up for the military. You have an idea of what could go on in there, but you really don't have any idea of the implications of everything that can happen to a human psyche, or the physical body until it actually happens.
The goal is 7th density, stabilizing.
Right.
And you have to understand, I imagine it helps to understand the physics that you teach in your academy, because that would help integrate that level of consciousness. Does that make sense to you at all?
This is also the stuff that I was studying when I was going through my ascension. And I studied for about 10 hours to 12 hours a day. All right. I had nothing better to do with my life. I was at rock bottom. I couldn't, just a whole bunch of complications. Okay. I had a lot of time. And when I started going through, I started with the sacred, basic platonic solids. That's where my journey started for a lot of my studies. And I had to projectile all of what I know for my abilities and everything else and ET knowledge to human knowledge that you guys are lacking a lot of information, a lot of information. A lot. And I try to piece this together as much as I can through my thesis statement that I'm still working on. Who knows? Maybe I'll win a Nobel Prize. Oh, wouldn't that be lovely? I'm teaching about the silver spiral because humans do not know hardly anything about it. They don't understand it. They don't know the science. So barely. But it helped me with my ascension a lot. Like it really helped me. And I was doing all of this stuff that I teach in the academy. Everything in the academy that I teach, I used to be able to do before I got back into the government projects because I had my time of peace. Where it was just the Chakrel who were keeping an eye on me, and they let me, they're like, they're the cool parents. They're like, go do whatever you want, you know. Once I got back into the projects, they're like, we're dumbing down your powers again. You're not allowed to have them. So
so
but
the sacred geometry is very important. And folks, Apollymi in her classes has some top physicists who knew nothing about silver spirals or anything else. So she said, so it's not that you're going to find super advanced physics in the regular schools that have programs, but you know, this is why your academy is so valuable for these kind of things. But the point you were making, right, is that by studying physics or by understanding more about that, that increased your consciousness level to the 7th tier.
It tried to break my brain quite a bit. But it did help because I started to, and I recommend making a journal when you go through any academy. You know, there's other academies that teach some of the stuff that I've been teaching. I'm sure I've had all students being like, oh yeah, I already know this stuff. And I'm like, where the hell did you learn this? You know, so, but if you keep your journal and you go through schools like this, because apparently there's more out there, you start to see the evolution of your consciousness along with it. And that is like mind-blowing to me. So when I first started out, I was like fourth dimension. You know, I still had 3.5 tendencies of pure emotion where I'm like, I don't get this. You know, you guys are just being jerks. But when I started going through the transition of everything, you can see the neutrality. You can see, you know, the evolution of my consciousness during certain stages, because I go back to those lessons and I redo them. And I'm like, okay, well, this is my perspective now versus when I started. And there was a huge difference, you know, in everything. And I tell all my students, make sure you keep your journal because that change is slight. You're not going to notice the change in yourself. I had to have my students go back, my beta students go back and reread their journals. And they're like, oh my God, was I really like this? Seriously? I had a student who was every other word a swear word, very pissed off at the world, very unfocused, very like just not happy with their entire situation. And they're otherkin. They're not human. All right. And they were still like 3rd density. Everything was survival. Everything was, you know, just rah, rah, rah all the time. Gaslighting everything. His behavior was terrible. By the time he was at least halfway through my academy, you could tell the changes. Although it kind of helped that he lived with me too. So like just being around other awakened people and people who are enlightened, you know, again, it's the environment. It changes people on its own. It wasn't the very most studious student, but having that environment, he calmed down. He became more compassionate. He actually went into like working for nursing homes and taking care of them, and he loved his job. This was a person when he showed up on my doorstep would rather just spit on them, you know. So evolution doesn't have to, the studying is important because it's basic physics of the universe. Everyone needs to know it, but you don't have to have it.
But I love what you said though about, and this is why we're doing this show, where you're explaining the 7 tiers so people can use that as a self-reflective, you know, kind of base system of like, oh, I'm slipping down, up, I'm moving up, you know. So it's kind of like replacing reactivity with patience and wisdom, you know. It's like
right.
So
I have to make one point clear though.
Yes.
Your evolution is the way that the Starseed Council base the ascension off of is without substances of any kind.
Yes.
Just to let you guys know. I don't make the rules.
That
Okay.
is so important. And I actually believe in that too. Yeah.
Like I'm all for, I voted yes for the marijuana stuff because I know it can help people. I've seen it, you know, but they base the evolution of consciousness based off of what you can do without substances. And when I teach my students, I have that rule right in there. If you use substances and you learn energy manipulation, you have to stay on it. I've even talked to psychologists about this. If you're one of the people who, you know, has to use substances to relax or whatnot, and you're in college, you better stay on it because your brain only learns with that substance in your system. If you're clean, you ain't gonna, you know, you might remember stuff, but it's the chemistry of everything that goes into it. And I would love to have the psychologist that I talk to come on and actually explain stuff because I like the hard facts.
Oh, that would be a great show. And yes, I can feel in people's minds that they're going, well, what about if I just use, ayahuasca, whatever the latest thing is, to just open the door, but not get addicted to it or give my power away to it?
It still doesn't work because you are using something to make your brain and frequencies vibrate already of what that substance is. You're not learning how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So and that's the huge thing between like what we call drug mages, you know, who use those to
Great
jumpstart
term.
people, you
That's a
know.
great term.
Drug mages are people who
Yeah.
are apothecary people or
Mhm.
alchemy people. Your shamans are drug mages. They
Mhm.
qualify like that because they know what substances to help that spiritual journey jumpstart. But what I train is you doing it yourself. And yes, medications affect stuff and ADHD affects stuff. I have ADHD students who are some of my top students.
Oh yeah, because they're multidimensional a lot. Yeah.
That has nothing to do with it. It's they literally took the time to retrain their brain. You
Hmm.
know, everyone has their own stuff. I shouldn't technically be able to do anything. All
Hmm.
right. I have stuff in my closet that you guys won't even believe. And you guys would be like, how do you even function every day?
Hmm.
So you don't have to be perfect. I am not perfect by any means. Okay. Being a hybrid, I have a lot of health issues. I can barely function in society as it is because everyone's weird. You
Well,
know?
and you're 100%. These are such important points. Thank you for, adding that in. My thing is I don't like to be dependent on anything. And so whether it's meds or whatever, it's like, because I just feel that if we keep learning to pilot our own ship,
Mhm.
um, we have to decide who is the pilot and where we're giving our power away to. That's my
Right.
point.
Right. You know, and again, like certain medication, like there are people who have to be reliant on stuff the rest of their life.
Hmm.
That's okay. You know, take your it's more likely, you know, like the LSD and the
Right.
drugs and stuff like that, you know. So
Or
if you're
addictions, or where you get addicted to that stuff, though.
right.
To have, so you're literally, this is a really important point. You're literally saying that you don't pass ascensions if you're using recreational drugs as a way of achieving that state of being.
You can still use the recreational drugs, but you need to ascend on your own. I'm not saying that you have to throw all that away. You know, even ETs use that stuff, okay? But you have when you're training, when you're trying to achieve everything, you need to have a sober mind. You need to know where you're going. You need to know, you know, what you're doing. You need to have absolute control. And it takes a lot of work. And I have a feeling that that's part of why this earth is not progressing because people just don't want to put in the work. It's too hard. It's not that they don't have manuals for it nowadays. It's just it takes time, you know, and dedication.
Well, these are the things that should be taught in school so
Yes,
that they do have
absolutely.
time, rather than the ridiculous stuff, a lot of the ridiculous stuff that is taught in school.
Yeah, 8 years of history that's
Ugh,
repeated for 6 years in a
it's
row. No,
mostly
thank you.
lies. Exactly.
Mhm.
So, okay. So where does Christ consciousness start, just as a term, start activating, if is that in the 7th tier? Is that a 7th level tier where your body actually can start to become Christ consciousness?
So you're gonna have to define Christ consciousness.
Um, that's true. That's true. The awareness of who you are in the overall big picture, I think of it, but it's a term you used when we were talking earlier, when we were talking about 7th level stabilization. You said that when people stabilize there, their body can learn to maintain a certain level of higher consciousness or Christ.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm a little slow this morning.
That's okay. That's
All
okay.
right. So for that definition, because I've heard two definitions of what Christ consciousness is, and that's why I wanted to clarify. The between 6.5 to 7th tier is when you start to really, understand your, not your astral body, but your higher consciousness, your higher self. During 5th, you should be starting to get aware of your astral body, or even 4th. It depends. So again, it depends on the person. Not everyone's going to have the same abilities. But by 7th tier, you're just about the brink to cross over into the new reality, and you're going to find your higher self there. You're going to realize that you are a bigger picture of something else.
And as the new reality could be defined as free of the matrix, because I remember you said at 7th stabilization in our pre-talk, at 7th stabilization, you said one is absolutely free from one's seed parent.
That's if you actually pass your ascension and your mark is complete, and then you can get off planet when they come do the seed pickup.
Okay, so a seed parent is what?
So this would be considered your star family.
Okay.
For most terminology terms for the UFO community, or the starseed community, it'd be your star parent. Whoever created you, whoever has the most stock in you, everything. When they place you down here, you basically become an adult. Until then, you are basically, your parents own you, right? Like they get to make all your decisions for you. No difference. It's no difference.
And so that's like a seed parent or the seed council from where you come from make that decision, like, woohoo, you graduated.
Right.
Okay. So now you mentioned also in a pre-talk, if I remember all this right, that the purpose of Earthseed's experiment and universe is for Ascension Trials.
Correct.
So describe a little bit more what you mean by that.
As you know, in Hinova, nothing changes. Everything, we all have very set rules over there that we have to abide by. So the seed universes and seed planets are for experimentation of all various kinds of things. It could be something easy. I've seen worse seed planets for certain things like slavery and that sort of stuff and not getting along. This is the worst for basically getting stuff shoved up your bunghole, okay? Like, I have not seen a seed planet so disconjunctioned from its original format for the experimentation ever.
Plus, we've had tons of resets. They've had to reset it.
Yeah, but the resets, every single time they reset is a new experiment.
Oh, it's not like trying to improve for the same experiment.
No.
Oh my God, that's a key point here. Okay, so it's like, okay, that experiment failed. Now we have to do a new experiment, but it can be related, right? The experiment can be related, but you subtract some things and add some things like a recipe.
Right. Like the last experiment, the 4th era of man, we had so many different hybrids from everything. You had the Nephilim, you had all sorts of like from the mythological eras and stuff. There was so much going on, and because the children were so powerful during the strife of war from the ET conflict, because we had a lot of warring factions with each other. The Dark Dracos came down here, started a whole bunch of crap.
Right.
You know, those were all very powerful, and they actually had an uprising from the seeds. You know, you guys are seeds, you're considered seeds. And they were very strong because they were interbreeding with everything. That's why humans can only breed with humans in this experiment. Only, quote unquote.
Yeah, right.
Yes, some of the genetics of the fourth era man still exist, and those genetics can breed with quite a few things and get hybrids really quickly. So, but the fifth era is only supposed to like be very selective on their breeding. But that also led to everyone looking the same down here. Nobody looks different. This is also why we don't communicate with the gods or the deities, and why all of our powers are stripped because of what happened last time. There was a huge like war of the seeds to the parents last time, and so they decided to strip everybody.
The kids rebelling with the parents. Not that the parents are all that much more mature.
Right.
If I do say so myself.
Right.
Okay.
Seriously.
Cool. Thanks that is such an important point. Now, one of the questions I feel out there in the ethers is people who have been trained in meditation. Is meditation imperative for ascension?
Absolutely. It is absolutely important. It is one of the only key factors that you can actually, by yourself, start getting in touch with your physical body, your body's organs, like all of their processes and stuff, controlling the energy in your body itself to heal yourself, to learn how to manipulate energy around you, your thyroidal flow, the flow of the golden and silver spiral, you know, and connect to your astral body and your higher self.
Wow. Okay, that's a clear answer.
You can achieve some of that stuff with you know, drugs and everything, but again, you're reliant on something that you need to possibly happen like this. So this is your strongest asset. So same with your heart.
The brain.
You have two brains.
For those that are listening to the podcast, she's pointing to her brain.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the podcast. I'm so sorry.
For those watching, she's pointing to her hair because it's looking awesome today.
I look like I stuck my finger in a light socket.
Oh, I love it.
I look like that one dude who's like aliens all the time with his hair poofy.
It looks great.
But your mind is literally your golden and silver spiral. It is your internal outlet to your astral body and your higher self.
Wow.
You need to be able to have full control over it. And being a super soldier, it's not easy when you have augments, but you know what? We still try anyway. I mean, we as in all of us, not myself in third person.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying all those, the 7 tiers, what we can use as a signpost along the way, and the importance and how we get there, and what not to do. So now let's get into a little bit more. So my first question is, who founded this universe? Are they technically a creator, a person, people who showed up in a space, like who founded this universe that we're in? Because this is called an experimental universe, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This has.
What are you allowed to tell us about that? Because I'm sure a lot of it's you can't, but if you can kind of move around the edges a little to tell us.
I definitely got to skirt around stuff here. Just like seed planets, when seed universes are created, they have a council. There's usually at least 7, the magic number. Yeah. You can thank sacred geometry for that, and the rest of the council is abiding by it. So, and the council is there for several reasons. They have to, like any experiment or scientist, they have to figure out what they want to do with it. They want to figure out their bylaws. of how this universe is going to be run and the experiments that need to be happening in them. Same thing with the seed planet, or any experiment if you're a scientist. And then they got to figure out what they want inside, as in like humanity. When I say humanity, I mean reptilians, amphibians, Octurians, humanoids, that sort of stuff. To me, that is all of humanity. Birds, anthro birds.
So it was a creator, like a source creator, and then it was a council under that of different species.
No, like the people who wish to create a seed universe basically have to come up with a plan and then go to the greater councils of creators and be like, we want to try this out. Or it's vice versa. Sometimes they'll go over to the some creators and sub creators. We talked about sub creators in Hanova, and they're like, we want you to have an orb, have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're going to get into creator training too, but I never asked that question about who founded this universe, because we know there's multi universes, different creators. Okay, so and you can't. All right, so we'll continue on. So I imagine the answer to this is infinite, but I don't know how many universes are there.
I can't count that high.
Okay, so more or less infinite. And we also had already asked how many experimental universes are there. And there's quite a few, because, and we'll get into that, what gods in training need to play around with. We'll put it that way. Creators in training. Okay, so but before we get there, who creates the consciousness of souls, or even new souls?
That's kind of difficult because it goes into two aspects of which humans are having strife with. You can create consciousness. This would be called the AI consciousness in human retrospect, where you actually create something that literally would have consciousness. Like the orb that was given to any creator to make a artificial, experimental universe is kind of like AI. It's organic AI, but AI nonetheless, or consciousness, because it was created. A natural born consciousness can also be created, and that would be a lot more organic, I guess you could say, but it happens on its own. There's no real intent of any other environmental consequence.
Okay, now that's fascinating.
Again, this goes into like how actual demons are created, or consciousness is created by the environment versus, or created by someone's higher self versus creating a computer.
Okay, so you have both options. You have the organic option, and then you have the virtual reality experimentation, organic AI option.
Right. So like your higher self is not AI. It is an organic sentient form that decided to splice off from prime source. You were like a thought, and that thought became something awesome. Versus I have intentions of creating a computer to do a very specific thing. It only has consciousness to do this specific thing.
Got it. Okay, so are new souls created all the time as other beings go on to different universes or games?
Yeah, I mean, consciousness is being created all the time.
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so, I mean, if you look at, no one really has like super say of like a consciousness being created somewhere out in space, like even the creators do not know everything. Okay. I don't care who you are, even prime source. I'm calling you out. They don't know everything. They don't know all of the circumstances of everything that's going to happen every given moment. They know what's happening in themselves because, just like if I meditate enough, like I can tell what the cells in my body are doing. That is conscious awareness. But do I know exactly what those cells are going to do if like a virus comes in that I don't know about and attacks me? I don't know what it's going to do.
Well, that's how creators grow, right? So with the new souls created all the time and other souls needing more experiences, I imagine a major issue, and I don't know how to put this other than use these terms, is an issue with overpopulation in infinity. Is there an issue with overpopulation on certain experimental seed planets and things like that, right? Is that part of the reason for the Ascension game?
So the Ascension process, like, helps with the evolution of consciousness so that you can reside in different densities. And overpopulation, kind of, maybe, like you can't create something out of nothing. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Like, and so much energy has to be expended or can be expended before you just have nothing more to give, before it transforms into something else. So, too much being on one dimension, it would take a lot. It was possible, but I wouldn't necessarily say super bad.
So you wouldn't say that over, like souls building up into the higher tiers it is like, you wouldn't say that reaching the ascension mark is crucial so you can switch universes and make more room for new souls?
Well, I mean, okay. When you tell me something, my brain goes into 50 different directions, so you got to be more specific.
I understand.
If you're talking about, like, again, you can't create anything out of nothing for energy wise perspective. So if you're having one universe that has a whole bunch of souls, right? Okay.
Right.
And they're transferring to another universe that has a whole bunch of souls. You still want souls that are going to be transferring into this universe because the change of mass of matter,
right,
it needs to happen. But as a soul, you're experiencing things differently because the physics are different. Creatures might be different, things might be different,
on different universes. But my point is, if you reach your ascension mark, right? Another point is, if you reach your ascension mark at 7, that opens the door where you're now free of the experimental ascension game to go to other places and that match your 7th density or higher frequency, correct?
Yes, to an extent. If you are in a physical body, and your soul is 7th level ascension, then you either have the chance of being reincarnated in a 7th dimension or a 7th dimension planet or a 7th dimension universe.
Uh-huh.
But
So
if you're still
it's the acceptance card you have to enter all universes that match the level you're at or below them, below that dimensional level or density level.
Correct. Now, you can be reincarnated in a 3rd dimension plane, but on a 7th dimension planet.
Whoa.
And they do this with technology.
Oh, meaning the goal is to get to the 7th density again.
Well, you already, even though you're on the 3rd dimension, you're in getting reincarnated on the 7th dimension planet. Like, there's a lot of paperwork that's involved because, if you get off that planet, then you're still in the 3rd density. But it's basically for like experimentation, interacting with other entities and other beings that may not be 7th tier, but you still have to follow 7th tier laws on that planet.
Now, as we're speaking about this, until we we're talking about our individual shard playing these games. We're not, right? We're not talking about all the other shards of ourselves, of our oversoul. We're talking about just this one.
Right, correct.
Okay.
Because when this shard dies, it still has an afterlife, unless you choose to go back to your higher self.
Right. Oversoul, higher self, astral body,
physical,
human, physical body. Okay.
Right.
So the oversoul is the one that's got the whole ball game going.
Right.
And
they're the ones with the spreadsheets all on their desk.
And makes the final decisions.
It makes the final decision of itself. It does not necessarily make the decision of what body you are going to be born into, because that is your astral choice. It doesn't have any responsibility of what afterlife you go to or what happens to you when you die, unless it decides to super call you back for some reason.
That's your free will choice, so to speak.
Exactly.
As a shard.
Yep.
Okay. Fascinating. Okay, folks. So let's get into requirements to be creator gods in training. Okay, so Earth essentially is used as an ascension game, and going up the essential, the 7 essential levels.
Right, but that's pretty much all the universe. The whole universe has ascension levels that they have to hit.
Okay, but some it can be 7, some it can be 4, some it can be 12, some it can be whatever, right?
Right. Well, because this universe is an experimental universe, it has to kind of do the same thing that this planet does, but its tiers are a lot higher to pass in order for it to actually be connected to what most people call like the tree of life, the bigger tree of life.
Right, because as you evolve over the time concept, which is illusionary, trillions of years, you're going to be looking for challenges, more things to do, more to grow. So there's no end to that, really, in a certain way, right?
In a certain way, it's infinite.
Okay, so requirements to creator gods in training. Who created, well, I kind of asked you this before, who created this game? You said creator councils created.
Which game?
Earth Ascension game.
So Ascension has to do with Prime Source.
Oh, okay.
If you were separated from Prime Source, they needed to come up with a protocol that would allow for evolution of consciousness in certain dimensions to be able to fall and rise.
Okay, that's
so
really an important point.
Right. So the ascension comes from Prime Source itself.
Okay.
The experimentation is, what's the word I'm looking for? The experimentation of each seed planet and each seed universe is up to the creator councils of those experiments.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You know, you keep finding as above, so below, as inside, so outside, that everything's microcosms of a bigger macrocosm kind of thing. Okay, so, and Yahweh himself, if I have this right, was a member of this creator council, correct?
That is correct.
So he was one of the upper gods, creator gods, correct? For this game, and also was a creator council member, right? Correct. So he had a vote in the council, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if I were to ask you, what is the one commonality among all creators, what would you say? What are they looking for?
Oh, that's not throwing a knife in anybody, but no, just kidding.
Like, what drives creators? Obviously to create, right?
Well, I mean, creation itself is kind of tricky. The drive to be a creator, it can be various. Everyone has their different reasons for achieving such a feat, because it's not like someone just throws a book at you, or a piece of paper, I should say, and been like, congratulations, you're now a creator. You have to earn it. There's a lot of laws that you need to abide by and a lot of training that you have to do. And guys, we're talking about like creators that Prime Source basically like allows them to have universes, allows them to govern, a lot of very important things. I'm not talking about, oh, we're gonna stick this, weird genetic thing in this egg and set it on a planet. Those guys are not even in the same category, okay?
Right. And we're going to get into all of that. So, in a way, I mean, just it seems like all creators, kind of like when we get to a point in our life and we want to change,
Mhm.
we're just like, we need to change, we need to grow, would be just motivated by some level of change, probably for themselves or something, right?
Well, for many, it is about the challenge for some of them because like, can I do this? Like, what
Right.
can I do with this? With the guidelines that have been given to me, what can I do with this? Am I going to be better than everybody else? Or am I going to be worse? How is this experiment going to, how is this experiment going to play out? Is again, creators don't have all the answers. If they did, why would they do this in the first place?
Wouldn't
Where,
do it.
some people like doing it if they have all the variables, but a lot of it is surprise. A lot of it is, knowing that the unknown is still there. How much
Yeah.
of this is going to diverge? And this is why we go into resets too, because some experiments have been reset and a lot of the creators are like, how is this going to be so much different than the ones from last time? It's like
Oh,
resetting your video game constantly and constantly because you're like, I'm just not quite happy with it, but I want to see what happens. Can I get to that same
yeah.
spot,
I want to
doing the
see
same
what
thing?
happens if I do this. But are creators, here's an interesting question that just popped in. Are creators, I guess it totally depends, impulsed to create only beneficial experiments
That depends on the creator.
that are going to, yeah, that are going to create beneficial growth or not necessarily?
That depends on the creator. There are creators out there who create a lot of the chaos entities, like the major ones. But again, how is that going to affect, the experiment as a whole? Are they going to be able to get along with each other? Are they going to be able to are they going to be divided all the time? Is there going to be strife? Is there going to be peace? They don't have those answers. They have an idea. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So the main jobs or purposes of creators is that to create new realities or experiments and see what happens? Is that
Well, it's the same principle of why you would have several people on a team for, making a project. Every person is going to have a different outlook on things. Every person is going to have different desires, different outcomes of what they want to happen. And this makes it non-linear. And that's why you have so many people on one council because they want that non-linear. If you're going to experiment outside of Hanova, where it's forbidden technically, except for by Prime Source themselves or themselves, you know, you want a lot of different aspects and a lot of different goals set.
oh,
And trust me, not all the creators get along with each other.
oh,
There are some who are what would be considered neutral, some who are all love and light, and some who are, yeah, okay.
okay. Do they ever lower themselves to team up against other creators?
There have been scuffles
You like
before,
gangs?
like in Hanova. Even in Hanova, like people don't get along all the time. You don't just because you're close to source itself, you guys have to understand that all the negative emotions are still part of source. They really are, but it's how you deal with them that and your actions that make it absolute, like either good or bad or changing for the environment. My creator in Hanova did not like the Shakra. Well, she liked the Shakral creator. Um, And they had their own little personal feud that ended up dragging us into it, you know, and all the contracts were signed and we could only fight a certain way and on certain territories. You know, we weren't allowed to hurt any of the wildlife or any of the environment so much. So we had kind of more primitive weapons, but again, prime example. And it was, you know, so they have ego. Okay. Ego never goes away. It's how you refine it that makes you a higher dimensional being or not. And these guys are all the way.
That is fascinating because, of course, so much in the spiritual movement is get rid of your ego.
If you get rid of your ego, you're getting rid of your true power.
Okay.
And I say this because your ego is directly tied to your oversoul. It is what simplifies you and divides you from prime source itself. Otherwise, you would just be like everybody else and sucked into your own thought process or into prime source's thought process. Your ego is part of your consciousness. Now, you can have the ego the size of a whale, you know, and be like, I'm the center of the universe and everyone needs to bow to me. And if you don't like it, you can shove off. That is toxic ego. Okay. What most people call toxic ego. Now, there is a time and a place for that attitude. In society, maybe not so much. It's very disruptive. It's not very good teamwork. It's very disorganized. When you're fighting something that wants to destroy you, you want a God complex like no other. Because at that point,
Aries taught you that.
Yes. Master Aries freaking beat my butt for having ego because I had a lot of it when I was a kid. And he freaking ripped it out like a rug right under me over a tar pit. Literally. He's like, I'm going to beat that out of you. And he did. He beat it out of me pretty good. Every single time. Like, okay, I gotta tell you this. The last time I had ego, I ended up sparring someone and I threw a fit because I knew I should be better than this. I threw my baton on the ground. It literally hit the ground and with more kinetic force than I threw it with, shot back up and hit me in the face. He always keeps his eye on me. So
that's a great story. That's a great story.
Joking, it freaking hurt. I had a bruise like right across here. My friend just laughed at me too, and he's like, "You should have."
That wasn't Archangel Michael getting back at you for cutting his hair off, was it?
No.
I'm just teasing.
So
okay.
But having that ego, just thinking that, you know, oh, I'm stronger than this entity isn't going to work. You know, you have to be absolutely devout to yourself that you have the ability to make this thing get out of your reality bubble. And a lot of people are like, oh, dump ego, dump ego. You're making yourself vulnerable, absolutely vulnerable to attacks.
Right.
Because again, it's the whole sheep factor. So there's a time and a place for even every chaos emotion. Anger, there's always a time and a place for anger because anger can bring you strength, but it can also be a very huge ball and chain, you know, that just absolutely destroys everything. It's like a wrecking ball.
Right.
So again, it's
dynamic
how
balance.
Yes, absolute balance. Knowing when to use it and knowing why you are using it and why it is affecting you the way that it is. Why do you even have this emotion in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
You have to refine yourself. And a lot of these creators are trying to refine themselves, you know, to be higher creators. Because when you get to prime source itself,
Ooh.
You know, it's not perfect. Okay. I hate to bust your bubble.
Yeah.
But it has more control over itself logically and emotionally than anyone else here.
That's great. That is so important. Everything you're sharing is just so important to understand. Now, so to kind of sum up the creator thing, you're saying creators are schooled in the ways of, I imagine, reality and existence, how that works. And are they there to maintain that, the fabric of existence, like say in this beta universe?
They are supposed to maintain the fabric and coding of, well, you could say coding, I guess, for people who understand AI stuff, coding of existence, because sometimes your experiments mess up a little too much. They get a little too ahead of themselves and can break things, which usually are annihilated. So there's a lot of strict codes for that. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. Well, it doesn't matter if the creator likes it or not. If things get a little too out of balance, it's so
That's part of the creator training book. So a creator is responsible for everything they create.
Exactly.
Literally.
And literally they sign a contract and they are held to that. If they break that, and Prime Source sends out the Arbor Council and they find out that you've messed up, it's not good, people. It's not good for any of us, because their mistakes rely on or come down on us too.
Yeah. The fallout is literally a fallout.
Yeah.
Literally, like, yeah. So the requirements to be a creator god are, of course, maturity, ascension, balance, all kinds of different things. You can add to that. And how does that compare to deities or royals?
So deities and royals are nothing more than titles that people give them. A creator, you do not have followers. You have your own power and knowledge that got you that far. For deities, most people have a following. For royals, you have a following. So that's a huge difference. Deities and royals don't even have to have the same training, the same contract signed, just like deities of the afterlife. There are deities after the afterlife that have the soul wells from Prime Source to help govern the souls across the multiverse. And then you have deities who are just like, I'm a deity. Oh, you give me your soul? That's cool. I'm just going to put it in a locket and throw it in my vault.
Yeah.
Warning. I'll dig you up in a couple thousand years.
Warning. Oh, wow. Okay, so obviously the requirements of a creator are incredible training, education, moving up the ladder, decisions, capacity, ability to maintain a creation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Certain level of maturity. Okay. So in the show, in our last show, you made clear that the one known as Jesus or Yeshua was not coronated when Yahweh died in front of you, who was the creator, died in front of you in this universe.
Right.
And that Yeshua was not coronated nor given the artifacts he needs to be king or follow in Yahweh's steps. So what happens then? Like, is it totally up to Yeshua? Can Yeshua say no? What if Jesus doesn't make it? There's no guarantee, right? Like, what are the rules around that whole thing? Like, if Yahweh says, okay, you're my next in command, so to speak, but Yeshua doesn't Yeshua have to go through a lot of still training and different ascension trial things or anything to become that?
So running a kingdom, even if it's on one of the other higher dimensions, and being a deity of an afterlife, which Yeshua was, he ended up having a soul well, ended up having the ability to give souls their afterlife, having the book of life, reincarnating them, all the nine works. You don't inherit that. That is a creator not title. That is a creator job. You have to literally, and he had to, like, not only for the souls, but as a creator of this universe. Those are two different contracts that Yahweh had to sign. So even if he was crowned king, he would only be crowned king of that dimension and of that dimension for that kingdom. that doesn't mean that he gets god powers like automatically. He has to earn them like the rest of them do. I almost said like the rest of us.
Yeah,
So, you
slip.
know, I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest. And he could deny it. He could be like, you know what, this absolutely is not my thing.
It's
I'm not ready.
overwhelming.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like your dad dying and then taking over the kingdom. I mean, time works differently, but can you imagine how much training a person has to go through? I mean, Yashua's not that old in all retrospect. He didn't, as far as I know, he did not exist before he was born on this planet. And they're like, oh, yeah, you know, like his consciousness was
Whoa!
one of
And
the
when was he
same.
born on this planet? You mean you're talking about during the time of Yeshua
Mhm.
in Bethlehem? That was his first life. He wasn't even born there, or his first.
It was his first life being born down here that I know of for
Oh,
physical form.
oh, okay, okay. Oh, okay, okay.
No, like he existed before that up in the dimensions.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I mean, like coming down here and having that first life and seeing everything that happened, and then they wanted him to come down here and rule Earth. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay.
You know, uh, it's that's a lot to take in, especially the time gap.
But I also don't think any creator should take over any place that it hasn't been here itself, so it knows from the inside out what it's like to be human, which Yeshua does know and has
Yes, he
compassion about that.
exactly because
What do you think
being
about that?
I absolutely freaking agree, and the ET councils need to hear that too, not just from me, because they've been for the last 5 years I've been shoving that down their throats. They're like, oh, you guys should be higher in Ascension by now. Why aren't you guys higher in Ascension? This is cakewalk. This is easy. I'm like, oh, really? Why don't you come down here and prove it? No, no, no. I'm good. You're
Yeah.
fine. No, seriously, come down here and prove it. You have the avatars, you know, that you can do. I know you can. So by all means, have at it.
It's a total oh, for me total requirement. Once you
Absolutely.
walk in their shoes, you will
Absolutely. And
not.
not just for a day. I told him, I was like, why don't you come down here for a
Yeah,
year?
right. And not just to Hawaiiers.
Right? And not be rich.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, why don't you come down here in everyone else's shoes, or even the people who are less fortunate, and see how well Ascension does.
Sorry,
Because
guys, that should be mandatory for creators. Period.
absolutely,
End of subject. That's my vote.
absolutely, you know. So yeah, and they're like, no, 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 we're good. I have been body hopped consciously into some of these ET Council members, or at least their associates, to come down here and live a life a day in my shoes. And they're like, I don't know how you do this every day. I'm like, this is just me lounging around. This isn't me having to, you know, have a work day or go out and have conflict or get shot at, you know.
So then, do they go back and do they mind meld with all the rest of the members of the council so at least they can get a real, you know,
Feel
feel for what that's
it
like?
depends. It depends on the faction. Sometimes they just write a report and throw it in the incinerator, I feel, but
Well, I'm going to go up there and kick some butt.
well, I told him, I was like, you guys aren't even in my body for, you know, super soldier stuff. You guys don't go on missions with me. You want the real deal.
Exactly. Oh, okay. That to me is just crazy. It's like you wouldn't hire anyone to be a top of an organization that hasn't lived through it themselves, you know?
Exactly. Like, why are you hiring people that don't even have either the passion or the knowledge? It's like putting a manager right off the street and not having them even work there.
Okay, I have one question before we go into planetary seed souls, and that is one's evolution of consciousness perceived by how much light we can carry in our astral and other bodies as well as our abilities? Or is there a universal scale frequency wise that determines that? Like, how is that determined?
So for determining ascension, um, people have to understand that you can still be 7th tiered ascension and still be within the like chaotic or silver spiral. You don't have to just be gold. Just to let you know. There are what most people would consider like negative entity beings that are actually very evolved consciously. And yes, you're going to produce a lot more light when you get to higher tiers, because you're having higher condensity, you're also having a larger energy scale, and the frequencies of those tiers are going to be stronger and different in sacred geometry. Excuse me, sacred geometry, and more getting close to like a sphere versus, different shape, a more rugged shape. So the light's going to be a lot more emitted.
A lot more what?
Emitted.
Emitted. Okay. Okay.
You're going to produce more of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Expand it out. Yeah. 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 Okay. That's interesting. All right. So let's get into what's involved in volunteering to be a planetary soul or planet soul, seed soul. How does a soul of a planet, what steps does it go through to volunteer to be a seed planet?
Well, it's kind of tricky because the planet that is a seed planet has to be evaluated and designated as a seed planet. Not all planets are seed planets. And I mean seed planet, I mean experimental planets for having the council and doing all this other stuff. For councils who are registered to the Starseed Council from Source Nova. So, and that planet might not actually have a soul. Like our planet originally did not have a soul because it got blown apart and then had to be recreated. And because of that creation, and when I mean recreated, I mean like a huge team came in and actually started putting pieces together and everything. It wasn't like a creator came over and been like, I magically make the earth now, you know.
So this was when the first Earth, which was huge, was exploded.
Yeah, that planet had a soul.
And was that called, is her soul called Gaia?
I don't know what soul that was.
Oh,
I
actually,
wasn't here for
different, I
that.
think. Okay, okay, okay.
I just have memories a
Yeah,
little bit.
I do too. Okay.
They ended up placing a consciousness in this planet. I'm not
After
allowed to
they
say,
rebuild it, put it back together again.
yep, I'm not allowed to say the planet's consciousness name, but
Oh,
many
everyone thinks it's Gaia, but I'm sure there's a different name than that.
there's a different name, but everyone calls it differently, you know. So,
Mhm.
but the Earth soul is female. I'll give it that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that soul ended up choosing to come down here and being part of the experiment.
It had to be a female if it's volunteering for to be a seed planet, and quite frankly, and it, and to put up and have empathy with all the stuff that she would be going through.
Well, I mean, there are seed planets that have male consciousness in them. So
I'm kind of teasing, but
I know.
you know.
I'm just letting people know there are seed planets that have male consciousness. And then sometimes you'll get a soul that doesn't have a gender identity. They're neutral, like they have both equally.
Okay, so our souls are progressing, our humanoid souls, or our third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh density souls are progressing through mostly multi-species or humanoid experiences. Okay.
Okay.
All right. On multiple realms. At some point, does that soul go, I think I want to be a planet now, because that will be ultimately challenging.
That would usually have to take a reincarnation process, or you can uh kind of like really contact someone to do that. It would be like having an avatar down here, and then when the avatar dies, you go back to your original body or a soul container of some sort, like a lot of the Dracos and some other species use. So that they don't have a physical vessel necessarily, and then they could put that soul into something else.
So do planetary or planets, whether they're seed or regular, do planets, do suns, do beings, they're all alive and beings, I understand, all have their own evolutionary soul path? Or
Yes. Like again, this
that's what I
planet.
think I'm trying to get to.
Okay, so this planet started off as a third density consciousness, and it has risen to 5 density. A lot of people on this planet aren't 5 density consciousness evolution, you know.
So
But
does that make it painful for her?
painful for us, maybe, but painful for her because, like, you know, they're the beings who are living on her aren't receptive to her needs, you know, all
Yeah.
the pollution and all the, inefficiency that human has, all the extra, it's not even just the mining, but like we're poisoning her and she's screaming and, only a certain amount of people like us can hear it.
Yeah.
So it is painful for her, but it can also be painful for us too, because she's rising in consciousness, which is affecting the Schumann resonance. That's why it's been spiking so high. A lot of the times, it's not even just the pole shifts or the solar flares. It's the consciousness like having energy bursts, basically. Um, and it affects people. On my Facebook, I ended up throwing up a research paper of how the Earth's magnetic field and energy field affects living creatures through our own energy field. And you can have heart attacks, you can have strokes, you can have all
Absolutely.
sorts of issues caused by this.
It definitely affects the heart. Huge.
Yes, in the brain. So, it's a love relationship or a hate relationship, but usually when a planet rises in consciousness, the things on it aren't too far behind because again, environment. It is easier to rise in consciousness when your planet's consciousness is higher than yours versus the opposite.
Oh boy, I can't even imagine that. Yeah. So that's one impetus to try and at least get to fifth density in tier,
Mhm.
right? For us.
And that's why a lot of these people are starting to wake up because the consciousness evolution of Earth, of this planet, has only been the last 40 years. The
Well,
last 40 years has it jumped from fourth to fifth, especially in the last 20.
Wow. I can see why I waited to incarnate. Could like this shard or part of my oversoul choose to be a sun that is leading an entire solar system?
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than reincarnating and choosing to be an animal or an insect or
Well,
a
it would
fish.
be a lot tougher job.
Not really.
Being a planet or the sun?
Not really. I mean, it's no different than your body right now. You have thousands of organisms living off of you.
Yeah, but you're
I
also
know it's kind of weird, but
no. I get it, but you're also responsible for a lot more than thousands, aren't you? I mean,
no,
just seems like
the planet has no responsibility to the things living off of it.
but it has an interrelationship.
It does, but so do you, all your microorganisms and everything.
Yeah.
The only responsibility it has is to itself.
Well, why didn't it blow us up a long time ago? Because of its its
Because it doesn't
contract
have the talcum powder to get rid of lice. It has its ability to defend itself. Earthquakes, floods,
exactly.
tornadoes, hurricanes.
It's her being a little upset, like let's level the field here. Yeah.
Plague,
Yeah. Okay, well that's a fascinating
I mean, if you are nice to the Earth's planet, and if you ask, you can communicate with it, which everyone should be doing, then it will provide for you. But if you're just going to be a virus to it, why would it help you? You know what I mean?
yeah.
I am not the most responsible person when it comes to recycling, but I've asked for help before and it's like, oh, you can hear me. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So beautiful. So you did mention that creators chose for us not to have access to celestial parents in the reset or guidance, but the other factor was or magic. Okay. So and then also in the gift of us now, which is fifth era of man, we were given the gift, I believe, of a positive genetic coding and a specific alteration enhancement. Is that correct?
So the fifth era of man is a scientific revolution even for ETs. It allows
the 22 species.
a little bit more than that. It allows for more than one type of genetic lineage of souls or soul frequencies to be able to be reincarnated in one body. And this was really difficult. So in order to be reincarnated in certain things, like your soul had to go through, because your soul collects a lot of data frequency when every single time you're reincarnated into something. And this is also why animals are important. Say you wanted to be reincarnated into one of the anthro dog races in space. If you were never a dog race before, you'd have to reincarnate into a dog because it's a lower conscious life form. You get the frequencies from that, and then your soul would have to kind of like hibernize the frequencies to be reincarnated into something else like that. So, and certain souls will only like to be reincarnated into certain frequencies. I don't like to be reincarnated into anything else but either elves or dragons, to be honest. So I'd have to have something with the hybridization of both of them, or at least one of them, to feel comfortable in it, you know. Otherwise, my body's or my soul's like, get me the heck out of here.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So this gets into the magic, which I believe is true science. And
Right.
you mentioned something in our pre-talk, which I'd never heard before, that magic comes naturally because of connection to source.
Correct.
So talk about that for people and why magic was removed from us, right?
As for the magic part, yes, it is true. Not everyone's going to have the same abilities. The abilities are based upon the physical form most of the time, unless you start merging with your astral body or higher self to get new abilities that body already has. The reason why magic was taken away from this planet, if you get off this planet and you go elsewhere and past the matrix and the veil, you'll get some of your abilities back. For if you have never trained with them before, it will be painful. So, and very, because a lot of your magic comes from your brain and your heart. You ain't gonna know what to do with yourself, to be honest. You know, everyone's like, oh yeah, they woke up and had magic abilities. No, your senses are going to be going crazy trying to figure everything out. It's not just this magical, wonderful moment that you like suddenly spring into puberty and you're like, I have powers now. I get to levitate stuff. It will hurt your brain.
You have to completely rewire.
Yes, you have to get used to it. You have to rewire. It's like, think about never being able to see, hear, or smell before, and then having those senses, and then everything's bombarding you at once.
Oh my God.
That's pretty much how it is. And that's why the awakening process is so slow for ascension. Because if everyone's like, let's drop the veil, let's drop it right now. I can't live here anymore. This comes from a lot of other kin and a lot of people who are like me. If that happened, and I was one of those people too, if that happened and everything dropped right now, you better hope that you were training, because the amount of pain that you would go through would be immense. And that's if you survived, if you had a lot of power, of magic abilities built up in you already. So easing into it, even though I hate to say it, is the best course of action. The reason why all of our abilities got stripped is because the experiment for this planet, they wanted to strip our abilities because of the revolt of last time. They were way too powerful, and the parents almost lost. They don't want me telling you about that. Ever since 2016 to 2018, they were like, you're not allowed to talk about this, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Well, I've got one more year left here.
Logic. It's logic,
Right?
Parents would be doing all this stuff. Healthy parents do not compete with their youth.
No, they don't. They guide them.
They guide them, and they want them to even be better than they are if they want to be.
But the experiment was, can these guys reach ascension with being deaf, dumb, and blind?
The ultimate challenge.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
It's the ultimate challenge of limitation, of being unlimited, playing the game of limitation. Yeah.
Now, there are people who have contracts of having their abilities still intact and coming down here.
Like you.
Yeah. Only because mine was meant for evil. And I was like, no.
And also ancestral. That's why they're hunting the ancestral DNA of people. So, because it means they can activate this more easily. Now, so magic. Now, I would imagine that not all species have magic abilities in their DNA. Is that true?
Yeah, not everyone. The base abilities that most people have, well, almost everything has, nature, plants, animals, insects, is empathy. All right. Empathy is the base form of telepathy. This means that you can receive and project your thyroidal flow, which is your own electrical field that your body produces. You don't have to have any knowledge of that happening. It does it by itself. That you can receive and reflect that from each other and receive information, digest that information, and correspond accordingly to your environment. Everybody has this. Humans have been trained to not have the sense anymore. They're not trained about it. And then when you start meditating, you start getting into that sense. So there's nothing.
Also the giggle factor and the pressure from society.
Right. So this ability is not one that has ever been stripped from humanity. It has been forgotten. There's a difference.
The magic ability.
The ability to receive and project the information from the thyroidal field and flow of everything on the planet.
Cool. Okay.
This is what most people call like talking with nature, because you can receive
telepathy or
no. Telepathy is a higher form of this.
Okay.
So this is your basic one. This has never been removed. The other thing that has never been removed is to receive or project energy past yourself onto something else, or to suck it in, because those two are base abilities of the gold and silver spiral from Prime Source itself. To cut those off, you would die completely.
Okay, repeat that. So golden spiral is the ability to give energy outward, and the silver is the ability
pull it in. Yes. Yes.
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
And most people have, everyone can have both. You have both, and no matter what. But one usually leans towards one or the other.
Mm-hmm. A sucker or a pusher.
Yeah, pretty much. People who are well grounded, who no matter who they're around, they seem to calm the people around them just standing there. They don't have to do anything. People with high anxiety are calm around them, or depression, that sort of thing. Those are usually people of the silver spiral. People of the golden spiral usually have like healing auras, or they make everyone happy or bubbly, and they're just standing there. They're not interacting with people or anything like that. Those ones, unfortunately, are really prime food for leeches and energy vampires, because they're like, hey, look at me, I'm a little light bulb.
I run so much energy. Yeah. Versus more contained.
Yeah, the more contained ones, you're usually going to have, let's see, how do I put this? energy manipulation is going to be very easy for those people because their condension rate is a lot stronger than those pushing their energy outwards constantly.
Convention rate?
Condension, to condense.
Condension.
Yeah. So when you're energy manipulating and you're trying to condense your energy to pass the third dimension to the fourth, which not conscious dimension, but physical physics, we're in the fourth dimension. So it's a lot easier for them because they already have a huge grounding ability.
Oh, fascinating. Very, very interesting. Ah, your academy just sounds wonderful. Okay. So kind of only a few last little connections here. You mentioned that the humans got jealous in the past of the ones that had magic, and that the history, and that led to the history in Irish mythology to something which you call the Fae Wars. So when did that happen? What were the Fae Wars? And were they part of an experiment by the Creator Councils? Like, I want to know, we never have gotten a chance to do details because I always put it toward the end of the show when we run out of time. So, and you being part Fae and I having a strong connection with that, I want to hear about that.
So I don't really know the exact timeline of the Fae Wars because it was a good couple thousand years. When they all got warning when the fifth era man was coming in, because a lot of them got set down here, you know, every for everything else. Honestly, I don't even think it was exactly the fifth era because there wasn't any wipe. I consider eras like when the wipe happened. So I think this was like what Mary Beaver was talking about with the sixth and the seventh, because they got put down here without the full wipe happening, to be honest. But the veil was getting put up. Okay, this is the time before Christ was born on this planet for Yahshua. And they got word and warning that the magic here, the prana, the mana was going to be a lot less than it is now. Now, when you are of a higher frequency and you get put into a lower frequency planet, you starve etherically. You starve. And trust me, it hurts. Like, doesn't matter how much you eat, it doesn't matter how much, you drink or caffeine that you have, you're hungry all the time. And they were vying for territory because these new batches of men have been put down in their territories. And so a lot of the Fae Wars ended up happening because these people who were of the new batches got really jealous that they didn't have abilities because they were created not to have as much abilities as the others. And
the others that were already there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You got to remember in the time frame before this, you had Fae, you had your mythological creatures. There was still some of the Nephilim and everything. Like I'm still kind of murky on the great between the first flood, the second flood, and
the different
this,
wipes.
Yeah, different general of the areas. So, but they were programmed not to have as much abilities, and so they, of course, they got really jealous because they're like, "Why can't I do that? Why can't I do that?" You know, and they unfortunately were more primitive and saw the Fae and the other creatures as a complete threat. I mean, they were completely outmuscled and outmanpowered and outmagicked. I mean, I can understand, but it's like you should have been using it to your advantage, you know? So a lot of wars happened, a lot of territory wars happened. You can see this throughout Celtic history, some of the stuff in Denmark and Ireland and even Norway. So a lot of the territory wars ended up happening, and the more that the veil, because it was on a timer to start like sucking out the energy or dampening it, basically it's one of the the fields around Earth and the moon where it starts to dampen. It makes prana really hard and to accumulate here. And a lot of the Fae ended up leaving. A lot of dimensional beings, not even just the Fae, ended up leaving this planet. A lot of ETs, more of like celestial creatures, even like some of the demons and stuff. They're like, nope, we're out of here. Bye. We can't exist here. It's too painful.
So did they go to another on the planet, but another density?
There are still portals to some places, and yeah, they can either rise or lower in density and stay there. But unfortunately, like the veil can still affect some densities, but it's weird because like when you get around to the portals and the other densities of Earth, like there's a general area around that vortex that just is kind of more over here than over there. So it affects their areas too. But
I understand.
yeah. So a lot of them ended up leaving, and the rest of them were basically hunted off or they had to go into hiding. We all know that story.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes me sad about the Fae Wars. I don't know why, but it just saddens me. Okay, so
the other thing about the Fae Wars is they were still happening when I was Bridget. So that's a general timeline type thing. But Bridget lived for a really long time. Like I lived for a good let's say about 1,000 years at least. Because I did actually see the entry of Christianity come in, sadly. Maybe that's why I'm so picky about it.
Well, you were there when Jesus arrived, right?
Yes. I actually got to hold him when he was a little baby. He tiny thing.
What's that story? Let's end with that story.
Okay, so when I was Bridget, Yahweh came to me and told me that his son was in trouble. And I was like, what? And they were, I don't know the full details of it, but basically they were going around killing babies in the area that he was in. And so I ended up having to waltz my way over there, which was a huge trek because I was still in the Celtic lands, and make my way over there. And then I remember Mary giving him to me and just been like, get the hell out of here. So
wait, meaning get Jesus the hell out of there?
That's not what she said. She just like take care of him and make sure that he's safe. I had to drop him off in a specific location that I'm not allowed to say.
Right.
And so I ended up like walking with him, and he was just wrapped in this blanket, this like tan blanket. And I ended up having, it was like really dark, and the city was, kind of getting raided a bit. And I had these lights around my head that they weren't candles. Okay, they were actual lights because magic had not fully disappeared yet. And so I had them kind of around my head on a low glow, and ended up having to walk in the freaking the desert wasn't so bad. Everyone's like, oh, it's all nothing but sand. It's not that bad. But I ended up going to the location and dropping him off to certain people. So
that was when the king was hunting all the firstborns to kill, right?
Is that what was going on? I didn't get a lot of detail.
Yeah, he put a decree out that all firstborns be hunted, because my guess is he heard about Yeshua coming in or something. I don't know.
I just remember it was a very nice night, and it was in the desert because I had to use one of the gates in the Celtic lands to get over to where he was, because I wasn't going to travel that far. And I mean, it's a check to get to the gate, but it was, I don't know, magic over there. Like when it started to come down, you could really feel it, but it was still more than it is now.
Yeah, I want to wear a candelabra around my head. Forget those flashlights.
Right?
That's a beautiful story. That is a beautiful. So you've always popped into key places in history to be the protector.
I don't know about protector, but
you were protecting Yeshua.
Well, yeah,
We're
only because I knew
protecting.
his dad.
Yeah. You were protecting Atlantis.
I suppose so. Kind of failed on
Yeah,
that one, but
you're 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 a huge protector and champion. Thank you so much, Apollymi, for that amazing story. I tell you, you're all full of gems. And just bring something up, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I picked up Jesus and dropped him off." Big deal. Yeah, no, we
it's not that big of a deal. He's just a person.
can't talk about it. He's a person, but still,
You gotta
it's
remember,
still.
I don't put people on pedestals. So like,
I know. I love that about you. I love you about it. So overall, folks, I hope you had as much fun with this as I did. And it seems like we have universal games for consciousness evolution, and some of us like to up the ante for souls with multifold challenges and experiences throughout eternity. So, Apollymi, you had mentioned your incredible academy and what you offer with the silver gold spiral and physics and everything else. So, please share your contact and where people can get hold of you.
I have to redo the videos for my academy, so we're gonna probably take this year off from getting students, or at least until further notice, because I have a lot of overhauling to do. I am not the best a teacher, but I do my best. So we're hoping to have everything done by the end of this year. However, you guys can keep updated on that through our YouTube channel at Galaxy of Unity on YouTube. I will be doing the announcements there. It is not part of Galaxy of Unity. I'm just allowed to mention it and sponsor my academy. It is free. I do not charge because this knowledge is like kindergarten knowledge that should be known. And the ET Council would probably bite me if I charged.
Yes.
So I know that there's a lot of people who
You
charge.
accept donations, though.
All my donations go to Galaxy of Unity so we can continue to make content for you guys, including our ghost hunting.
Exactly. And all you people out there, I know that money's tight, but there's always something you can offer our stations or her stations for the amount of hundreds of hours per show of work that's involved in all this stuff in your academy. Okay.
Oh my gosh. I know that it has helped people. I've had personal students and apprentices, and I've seen the changes, which is why that I've also made the academy and for other reasons. But when the time comes for the announcement saying that we're taking on students, please email me at apollymi@gmail.com. Do not use the Galaxy of Unity email.
And also, folks, I just want to say something I did a couple years ago. It was very short, like 12-minute shows that I called Cosmic Jeopardy. You can go on cosmicbrilliance.com and look at the videos. And this is called Earth Game Mastery, the manual you never got at birth. And I think I designed it for the family. And I condensed and synthesized material that I am happy to say is verified by much of what Apollymi shared today, but not to that level of detail, all about answers to bigger pictures. So instead of having your kids and family sit there and just read the same thing in papers or be lost, you might want to play these 12-minute games with each other where I only give you 8 seconds to respond intuitively to your first answer of the hit, and it will bring out some of the intuition in your children, your family. It's for all ages. So go to Cosmic Brilliance and look for Earth Game Mastery, the manual you never got at birth. And I cover over 67 spiritual questions with quick answers. And as I said, that's part of what we covered today. And I was curious what you would come up with, but there's a lot of collaboration and intuitive sense. Thank you so much, Apollymi, for all you give and all you are, and this exceptional generosity of time that you have given for these shows, and especially this one, which is jam-packed with very, very important information about people's ascension. I'm truly grateful. Thank you, love.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me on the show and the support from all of your subscribers. Guys, thank you. It's been very amazing. I've had a lot of good feedback from everybody, which means a lot to me because my journey from the beginning was not easy. So
Apollymi is truly a hidden gem, and she is exceptionally humble. So honored at this time that she came into our lives. We'll see you next show. Take care. Bye-bye.